You know that you are trying to discredit a current witness at a current trial who is testifying right now outside of that courtroom. You know better, and it is shameful.
He has stated that he has been involved with the Bragg case, helping to prepare Mr. Cohen for his testimony. So he is quite closely aligned with an admitted and convicted liar and perjurer. He's also paid the Judge Merchant's daughter's firm over $150,000 for her services. So I think we've got quite a conflict of interest.
We're going to take a look at a couple of clips that came out of congressional hearings about lawfare. Dan Goldman of New York, aka the Levi Strauss congressman. I call him that because he comes from the Levi Strauss fortune, which he was able to use to fund his campaign as well. What you're about to see is Goldman accused the witness in this hearing of influencing the Trump trial, which is then refuted by Harriet Hagman of Wyoming, who points out that not only did Goldman meet with Michael Cohen to prepare him, as he said here,
and I have deposed Michael Cohen. I have met with him a number of times to prepare him.
He also has links to one of the daughters of one of the judges from the Trump trials in New York.
You know that coming down here, outside of that courtroom, while that witness is on the stand to try to impeach his credibility and his testimony, is jury tampering. You know it is unethical. You know that you are trying to discredit a current witness at a current trial who is testifying right now outside of that courtroom. You know better, and it is shameful. Mr. Trustee, you and I worked together at the Department of Justice. We had a number of interactions related to organized crime. I had no idea what your politics were. I imagine you had no idea what my politics were, because it doesn't matter. And it's very interesting to hear you now nitpick about the Speedy Trial Act and about what you claim to be unprecedented conduct in Mar-a-Lago. But I'm confident that you never came across anyone who refused a request to voluntarily return classified materials, who refused to comply with a subpoena for those classified materials, who was found to intentionally conceal and hide and obstruct justice by concealing those classified documents. You've never come across, that is unprecedented, I am certain, because that is a clear predicate for a search warrant. When someone obstructs justice, refuses to comply with the subpoena, and Mr. Issa can make up all of the facts that he wants about declaring it to be classified because he thought it or whatever it is, that will be decided in court. All of these cases will be decided in court by a jury based on the facts, evidence, and the law, and all the Republican majority is trying to do here today is lawfare, is interfere in ongoing criminal investigations that our system is perfectly well equipped to handle. And I yield back.
Well, thank you. And if it seems like there might be a dog in this hunt on the other side, what you need to understand is that Mr. Goldman, the novice representative from New York, actually does have a personal stake in this case. He has stated that he has been involved with the Bragg case, helping to prepare Mr. Cohen for his testimony. So he is quite closely aligned with an admitted and convicted liar and perjurer. He's also paid the Judge Merchant's daughter's firm over $150,000 for her services. So I think we've got quite a conflict of interest from Mr. Dan Goldman, the novice representative from New York. And just one other thing to keep in mind when considering the hostility from the folks on the other side of this aisle is that the ranking member of this
Mr. Chair, I would move to have that
was Jeffrey
stricken from the record,
Epstein's
to have
fixer.
that phrase taken down.
The ranking member was Jeffrey Epstein's fixer. So I think that might give you some idea of why you see this hostility.
Hang on,
Statements
don't
be
let us,
taken down.
related the ranking
Mr.
members
Goldman.
recognized.
I would ask that the statements regarding the conflict of interest related to Mr. Goldman be stricken down from the record. Engaging in personal personalities
In your
on this
14-minute and 14-second opening statement, you called the former president, current candidate for the office of President of the United States, all kinds of names. I think
He's not a member of this
I
committee.
understand he's not a member, but
And that's
he's
what I'm
still
asking
a former
you
president.
related to.
What I'm saying is we should
I'm
all be
related
careful
to
about it.
our
I think
member.
the gentlelady from Wyoming was just stating facts that are in the news report.
She accused him of a conflict of interest on the committee during the hearing. I ask that that be stricken down.
Gentlelady's point of order is overruled. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton, would you agree that gag orders on trial participants were created with the intent of securing a defendant's right to a fair trial and ensure efficient administration of justice?
It's precisely correct. And it's in fact usually intended to prevent the prosecution from making extrajudicial statements that are going to be prejudicial to the defendant's rights.
And Mr. Trustee, I think that you testified that in all of your years of experience, you've never seen a circumstance where a defendant had a gag order imposed against them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would it be fair to say that while such an order is intended to guarantee a defendant's Sixth Amendment right, it also at certain times could raise First Amendment issues?
It does.
Okay. In Bragg's political persecution of Donald Trump, Judge Merchant instituted an unconstitutional gag order against the defendant, President Trump. Yet Judge Merchant has levied no such order against any of the other trial participants, like Michael Cohen, who continue to publicly attack Mr. Trump. Mr. Hamilton, is the gag order issued by Judge Merchant a significant departure from the normal order of business, and does it reveal the First and Sixth Amendment tensions which underlie this case?
Most certainly does.
And why does President Trump face such a legally questionable gag order in this case? Well, simply put, it's because it is a classic example of lawfare being employed by Democrats against their political opponent, weaponizing the various branches and levels of government, something that we have seen in the last 8 years that has been absolutely shocking to the conscience. DA Bragg resurrected a zombie case and is using a novel legal theory which has not even been explained to the defendant or the jury. He selected Matthew Colangelo as lead prosecutor, a former Biden DOJ official and DNC consultant, and Judge Merchant, who made campaign donations to President Biden and the Democrat Party during the 2020 election, and whose daughter's firm worked for the Biden and now Harris campaigns, is overseeing the case and imposing speech restrictions on a person Judge Merchant called, quote, possibly the next president of the United States. Judge Merchant went so far in the last 2 weeks as threatening to jail a former president and presumptive major party nominee for violating an order which infringes on his free speech rights. Writing in The Federalist, Tom Christ analyzes how lawfare offers benefits and a means of victory regardless of the outcome of the courtroom, which is causing as much pain as possible and treating the defendant like an enemy versus the defendant. I want that to sink in. Watching Judge Merchant, it is very apparent that he is treating President Trump as an enemy, not a party and not a defendant. Mr. Hamilton, do you think the gag order falls into this playbook and serves an additional lawfare benefit for the left in that it can be used to enact an even larger legal burden on Donald Trump for simply exercising his right to free speech?
Yes, I do. And in fact, quite frankly, when you have a gag order like that, or when you have abuses of processes like this, as my colleagues have alluded to before, the pain in the process is the goal. That's really the goal here. Whether they get a conviction, whether they get any kind of civil fine or judgment, it's not necessarily the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is to cause pain to the political opponent, and that's what they're doing to Donald Trump.
One of the things that I have observed as an attorney who was a trial attorney for 34 years, is that Judge Merchant is making such blatant reversible errors. He absolutely knows that if there is a conviction in this case, it will be reversed on appeal. And it's as though he is attempting to do that because he knows that no such appeal would actually take place prior to November, yet he would have a conviction on the books, which is the classic, and I think in this case exposes the way in which they are using lawfare against President Biden or against President Trump. I have never seen a judge make the kind of errors that this judge has made in this case before. And I think he recognizes that if there is a conviction, it would be overturned on appeal. That is what our justice system has turned into because of the lawfare being waged by the Democrats. It has to end.
I love being able to respond to the novice from New York. First of all, thank you so much for stating the obvious that political lawfare is in fact election interference. That's what we're seeing with the sham Alvin Bragg trial. Thank you also to the novice freshman member for New York, highlighting that withholding military aid to an ally for a political purpose, just like Joe Biden is doing to Israel. Always grateful for you stepping in it. Mr. Costello, in your opening statement, you said that in the over 50 years serving as a lawyer, you, quote, have never seen the types of politically motivated cases that have been brought in this presidential election season. These political cases are being used as a weapon of war to damage, defeat, or impede political adversaries and their allies. Instead of political warfare, it is lawfare, a cancer upon our collective judicial system. I want to begin with Alvin Bragg's weaponized sham trial in New York. Isn't it true that in Alvin Bragg's campaign for Manhattan DA, Bragg specifically ran on going after President Donald Trump?
That is true.
Isn't it true that Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, declined to prosecute President Trump?
That is true.
And the FEC also did not prosecute President Trump.
That is true.
And the DOJ did not prosecute President Trump in this case.
The DOJ referring to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District?
Correct.
Absolutely true.
And one of the reasons the Southern District of New York turned down this case was because the supposed star witness, according to Alvin Bragg, Michael Cohen, was totally, quote, unworthy of belief. Isn't that true?
Without a doubt.
This is the same Michael Cohen who pled guilty to 7 counts in an indictment that had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump and actually predated the first time he met President Trump, correct?
Absolutely true.
And in fact, this is the same Michael Cohen who perjured himself to Congress. Isn't that true?
Yes.
In fact, when called as a witness in this sham trial, Cohen was asked directly if he was honest during his testimony to Congress. He said no, admitting perjury. But it's not just Bragg's case that is a total sham and illegal political lawfare going after Joe Biden's top political opponent, Donald Trump. This rot goes deep all the way up to the top in the Oval Office. Because when Congress referred this admission of Cohen's perjury to Joe Biden's DOJ, isn't it true that the DOJ has refused to prosecute?
That is true.
Isn't it correct that Michael Colangelo, who was the 3rd highest ranking official in Biden's DOJ, was transferred to Bragg's office to run this weaponized prosecution of President Trump? Isn't that true?
Not only true, but it's unheard of.
Unheard of. It's a disgrace. Do you agree that this weaponization of lawfare goes straight to the top with the purpose of helping Joe Biden's failing presidential campaign?
The circumstantial evidence definitely supports that.
And the unconstitutional gag order on President Trump from New York Judge Merchan is unprecedented lawfare.
As far as I know, absolutely.
And let's go to the daughter of the judge. Isn't it true that she is raising millions of dollars off of this sham case?
Well, I have to say I've read that in the media. I don't know it of my own knowledge.
It is true.
Thank you.
One additional question. I want to talk about the rigged and unprecedented jury selection process. Isn't it true that Bragg's team asked the jurors if they followed Trump on social media?
Yes.
And isn't it true that they did not ask any of the potential jurors if they followed Biden on social media?
Or Michael Cohen.
Or Michael
Yes.
Cohen.
Yeah.
And isn't it true that 87% of the jurors said they voted for Joe Biden?
That's true.
Is this unprecedented and lawfare jury shopping?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Political lawfare for the purpose of election interference to go after Donald Trump. Do you agree?
Totally.
This is one of the reasons that Trump's polls continue to skyrocket, and it's why President Trump will win in 2024 to end the illegal and warped weaponization of the justice system, because if they can illegally go after Trump, they can go after anyone. I yield back.
And while we're on the topic of Dan Goldman, because this is always entertaining to watch, here's when he tried to go back and forth with a town hall reporter.
You can't sit here, Mr. Harrison. You were an employee of the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to get to that in a minute. You can't even acknowledge what your own agency said, that the biggest domestic terror threat is white nationalism, white supremacy. You're trying to get us, gaslight us up here as if Antifa, which Mr. Rosas, apparently the expert now in organized terrorist activity, has overruled the FBI director who says, there's a headline, says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization. No. Let's not listen to the FBI director. Let's listen to, sorry, what's your title? Senior writer at Town Hall, who is going to tell us that the FBI director is wrong. And I'd like to introduce, there's no question. I'd like to introduce, by unanimous consent, an AP article saying the FBI director says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization.
Without objection, so ordered.
Can I respond to that?
No, you cannot. I didn't ask a question.
It's the gentleman's time. He can spend it any way he chooses.
Thing that one of my colleagues said about you a little while ago. I'd like to give you time to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. Well, I think it's funny to be lectured by an heir to the Levi Strauss Corporation, and honestly, that's probably why he doesn't consider property damage to be that big of a deal, because not only does he have that, but he also has what some would describe an impossibly good stock portfolio. But what I can tell you is
I've met with him a number of times to prepare him